The sky over the forge world of Ferris X was not a celestial dome. It was a suffocating lid of leaden smog, bruised purple by the bleed of the warp. There was no sun here, only the rhythmic strobing of orbital bombardment and the dull, hateful glow of manufactorums that spanned the horizon. Down in the mud, a freezing slurry of industrial waste and the liquefied remains of the fallen, Watchmaster 77 Delta of the Death Korps of Krieg checked his loss gun. Around him, the trench line stretched for endless kilometers, a jagged scar filled with silent, gas-masked figures who waited to die. They did not complain. They were born for this. Then the sky screamed. A vessel of alien geometry, sleek and golden but blackened by the touch of the Imperium, tore through the clouds. It slammed into no man's land with the force of a tactical nuke, vaporizing the dead and throwing the living into the dirt. From the burning wreckage, a titan rose. Optimus Prime hauled himself free, his azure optics piercing the gloom. His internal system screamed warnings, transwarp drive destroyed. Location unknown. He was alone. "I am Optimus Prime," his voice boomed, a deep baritone that vibrated in the chests of the terrified guardsmen. "I come in peace. I require assistance." In the Imperial command bunker, Commissar Varric stared at the screen with religious horror. He saw a machine that moved with the fluidity of a biological creature. A machine that spoke with an eye. "Abominable intelligence," Varric whispered, gripping his power sword until his knuckles whitened. "It mocks the holy form. All batteries, kill it." Optimus raised his hand in greeting, only to be met by a wall of fire. Basilisk shells slammed into his shoulder. Lost cannon beams scorched his Cybertronian armor. He staggered, confused. His sensors read their terror. They were attacking the very being trying to save them. "Cease fire." "I am not your enemy," he roared, but the shelling only intensified. Before he could retreat, the mist parted. The Iron Warriors, traitors of the IVTH Legion, unleashed their beasts. 3 defilers, monstrous, crab-like demon engines powered by tortured souls, scuttled forward, vomiting warp flame. Optimus froze. He felt the wrongness of them. They had no sparks, only a hungry, screaming void. They ignored the humans and charged him. Prime snapped his battle mask into place. His hand shifted into an ion blaster, and his other activated the Energon axe, casting a defiant orange glow against the gray misery of the world. "One shall stand," he muttered. He met the first defiler head-on. Metal screamed as he caught its crushing claw, then brought his axe down, cleaving the demon engine in two. Black ichor sprayed across his chest. He spun, blasting the second machine into scrap with precise ion shots. It was a display of martial perfection the 41st millennium had rarely seen. Standing amidst the wreckage, covered in the oil blood of monsters, Optimus turned back to the Krieg trenches. He expected gratitude. He expected a ceasefire. Crack. A heavy bolt shell struck the back of his helm, knocking him forward. Optimus stumbled. The Kriegers were firing again. Commissar Varric stood on the parapet, screaming, "Suffer not the alien to live. Destroy the lie." Sorrow, deep and crushing, flooded Prime's logic centers. He looked at the humans reloading their weapons to kill their savior, then at the gathering chaos horde on the horizon. "Forgive them," he whispered into the static. He deployed a smoke canister, shrouding the battlefield in white fog. As lasers cut blindly through the mist, the sound of a heavy engine roaring away faded into the radioactive wastes. He was alive, but he was an outcast in a galaxy where hope was the greatest heresy of all. Deep within the ferrocrete bowels of Hive City Tenebros, the air did not move, it stagnated. It was a thick soup of recycled sweat, coolant leaks, and the copper tang of old blood. Here, in the Underhive, millions lived and died without ever seeing the sky. High above, in the spire of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Mugos Domina Kepri watched a vid capture loop for the 100th time. Her optic sensors whirred, zooming in on the pixelated image of the red and blue Titan. She watched the impossible. The metal shifted. It did not merely rotate on servos. It flowed. Mass displacement occurred without ritual or prayer. The machine transformed into a vehicle in 2.4 seconds. "Hairtech," she rasped, her voice a synthesized grind of static. "Or divine?" Her mechadendrites, serpentine metal tentacles extending from her spine, twitched in agitation. The Collegia Titanica took decades to build a god machine. This entity rebuilt itself in moments. It possessed no crew. It was a silencing of the machine spirit, a blasphemy of the highest order. And yet, Kepri felt a surge of emotion she had deleted from her cortex decades ago: covetousness. Deploy the Sicarian rust stalkers, she commanded the new sphere. I want it immobilized. Do not damage its processing core. I must commune with it. Miles below, Optimus Prime drove through the industrial labyrinth. He was in his vehicle mode, his massive tires crushing heaps of refuse and bones. He kept his headlights off, navigating by radar and thermal sensors, trying to be a ghost in a city of monsters. He was damaged. The heavy bolter fire from the Kriegers had ruptured a primary fuel line. He was leaking energon, leaving a glowing blue trail that sizzled against the grimy pavement. Status: fuel reserves critical. Self-repair systems offline. He needed information. He needed to understand why this world was so broken. Prime found a derelict data terminal in an abandoned manufactorum. It was a crude, Gothic interface, a screen set into a stone altar, surrounded by unlit candles. With a metallic sigh of hydraulics, he partially transformed, extending a data interface cable from his wrist. He jacked in. In his universe, accessing a network was like diving into a river of light. Here it was like wading through a sewer. The new sphere of the Imperium was fragmented, archaic, and screaming. The data flooded his processor, and for the first time in millions of years the Prime felt horror. He didn't find history books. He found litanies of hate. He accessed the files on servitors. He saw schematics of human beings, criminals, dissidents, or just unlucky citizens, lobotomized and hardwired into elevators, gun turrets, and doors. He saw babies vat grown to become cherub drones. Freedom? Optimus whispered, his voice trembling with electronic grief. Is dead here. He realized the terrible truth. The humans didn't attack him just out of fear. They attacked him because their entire culture was built on the foundation that anything different must die. Xenophobia wasn't a flaw, it was their religion. Suddenly his proximity sensors screamed. Movement detected. Fast. Silent. Optimus ripped the cable free and spun around, his battle mask sliding into place. They dropped from the rusted rafters like spiders. Sicarian rust stalkers. They were nightmares of the Mechanicus, assassins with no legs, only metal stilts, their faces replaced by gas masks and sensors. They wielded transonic blades that vibrated at a frequency capable of cutting through armor like butter. They did not roar, they emitted a high-pitched static shriek that scrambled audio receptors. Surrender, machine thing, the leader chattered in binary. Submit to the Omnisia. I submit to no one, Optimus rumbled. He deployed his ion blaster, but in the cramped confines of the manufactorum, he couldn't risk a full spread. The rust stalkers were too fast. One blurred forward, slashing its blade across Prime's chest. Sparks showered the room. The blade cut deep, carving a gash through his Autobot insignia. Optimus grunted, grabbing the assassin midair. He slammed it into a support pillar with enough force to liquefy its organic components inside its armor. But three more were on him instantly, their blades humming the song of death. They were dissecting him alive, targeting his joints, his hydraulics, his eyes. Prime fell to one knee, overwhelmed. He swatted one away, but another drove a cord claw into his shoulder joint. I do not want to kill you, Optimus shouted, his voice echoing in the vast, empty hall. You are slaves. I can free you. The rust stalkers paused for a microsecond. The concept of freedom was so alien to their programming that it caused a logic error. But the pause was enough. Optimus activated his thermal vents, releasing a cloud of superheated steam. As the assassins reeled, blinded by the heat, Prime transformed. He became the truck again, his engine roaring with the fury of a trapped beast. He didn't flee away from them. He reversed into them. The sheer weight of his chassis crushed the assassins against the altar of their own data god. Optimus roared out of the manufactorum, smashing through a ferrocrete wall and plummeting into the lower levels of the sump. He was leaking more energon now. He was being hunted by the planet itself. And in the darkness of his cab, the leader of the Autobots realized that to save this world, he might have to burn it down first. The bottom of Hive City Tenebros was not a place where life was meant to exist. It was a chemical bowel, a continent-sized swamp of toxic runoff, crushed dreams, and the mutated descendants of those who had been forgotten thousands of years ago. There was no light here, only the sickly, bioluminescent glow of radioactive fungi and the occasional spark of failing machinery. Optimus Prime limped through this purgatory. He was no longer the gleaming knight of Cybertron. His red and blue armor was scoured by acid rain and caked in layers of gray industrial filth. The deep gash in his chest, carved by the Ruststalker's transonic blade, sparked rhythmically, leaking energon that hissed as it hit the black sludge of the sump. He was dying. Slowly. His self-repair systems were failing, unable to synthesize the raw materials needed to patch Cybertronian alloy. Energy reserves, 9%. Stasis lock imminent. He found shelter in the ruins of a collapsed cathedral, a massive, Gothic structure that had fallen from the upper spires millennia ago, now half buried in the muck. Gargoyles with broken faces leered at him from the shadows. Optimus collapsed against a pillar, his massive metallic breathing heavy and labored. Why? He rasped, his optics flickering. Why is there only war? Then he heard them. Scuttling sounds. Whispers in a dialect so broken it barely registered as Gothic. Optimus activated his battle mask, though his servos groaned in protest. He scanned the shadows. Dozens of heat signatures. Small. Malformed. They emerged from the debris not as warriors but as wretches. These were the mutants of the Underhive, pale, twisted things with too many eyes or limbs that ended in claws. By Imperial law, their very existence was a crime punishable by flame. They held jagged scraps of metal and stones, shaking with terror. Optimus lowered his weapon. He saw their ribs showing through translucent skin. He saw the sores on their bodies. He saw fear, primal, overwhelming fear. "Do not be afraid," Optimus said, his voice a low rumble that shook dust from the ceiling. The mutants flinched. One of them, a small creature with a milky third eye, stepped forward. It held out a canister, a broken water purifier. It was their lifeline and it was dead. The creature held it up to the giant machine, a silent, desperate prayer. Optimus looked at the device. It was crude technology, barely functional. He looked at his own energy readings. 9%. If he gave them power, he would weaken himself further. He might not survive the night. Freedom, Optimus whispered to himself, is the right of all sentient beings. He opened a panel on his forearm. From it, a small cable extended, glowing with pure blue light. He connected it to the rusted purifier. The transfer was agonizing. Optimus felt his spark dim as the energy left him. The blue light pulsed through the cable, washing over the mutants' faces, reflecting in their wide, watery eyes. For a moment, the gloom of the sump was banished by the clean, holy light of the Matrix. The purifier hummed to life. Clean water began to trickle. The mutants did not cheer. They fell to their knees. They wept. They touched his armored feet with reverent hands, chanting a word he did not understand. Omnicia. Omnicia. No, Optimus said gently, withdrawing the cable. He felt heavy, exhausted. I'm not a god. I am a soldier. But to them he was more than a god. The Emperor demanded their death. This machine gave them life. Suddenly the ceiling of the cavern shook. Dust rained down. Optimus's combat sensors flared to life, overriding his fatigue. Above them, miles up in the hive, something massive was moving. He detected seismic charges. Hostile signatures detected. Designation, Astartes. Chapter, Black Templars. The Imperium had not given up. The Mechanicus wanted to study him, but the Inquisition had arrived to purge him. And they didn't care who stood in their way. You must run, Optimus told the mutants. He tried to stand, but his leg servo locked up. He fell back against the pillar with a deafening crash. The small mutant with the third eye didn't run. It stood before Optimus, raising a rusted pipe as if to defend the giant. Then another stood. And another. A ring of broken monsters forming a shield around the fallen Prime. Optimus stared at them. They were the lowest of the low, the filth of this galaxy. Yet they showed more courage and loyalty in this moment than the decorated heroes of the surface. I will not let them take you, Optimus growled, forcing his body to obey through sheer will. His optics blazed with a renewed, dangerous intensity. Above them the rock cracked. A drop pod drilled through the layers of the hive, smashing into the cathedral floor 50 meters away. The doors blasted open with explosive force. Out stepped giants in black power armor, tabards of white cloth and crosses of iron. The Black Templars. They carried bolters and chainswords, and they radiated an aura of fanatical hatred. The Castellan leading them leveled his combi flamer at the mutants shielding the Prime. "Purge the unclean," the Space Marine bellowed. "Burn the heretic. Kill the beast." Optimus Prime roared, a sound of pure mechanical rage, and threw himself in front of the line of fire. The underground cathedral became an inferno. The Castellan's combi flamer unleashed a torrent of liquid promethium, a roaring river of chemical fire that washed over Optimus Prime. The heat was white-hot, instantaneous, and suffocating. It was not merely fire, it was a consecrated cleansing, blessed by the chaplains of the Requiem to burn the soul as well as the flesh. Optimus did not move. He stood like a breakwater against a tidal wave, his massive armored back hunched over the cowering mutants. His thermal sensors screamed. His paint bubbled and peeled away, revealing the scorched protoform metal beneath. "Warning, internal temperature critical. Coolant systems failing." "Die, abomination," the Castellan roared, his voice amplified by the vox grill of his helmet, echoing like the judgment of a dark god. Optimus gritted his dental plates. He diverted all remaining auxiliary power to his structural integrity fields. He was burning, but the creatures behind him, the wretched, the sick, the innocent, were safe from the flames. "I will not yield," Prime thundered. He swept his arm forward, creating a gust of air pressure that scattered the flames. With a metallic roar he lunged. He didn't fire his blaster. He wouldn't risk hitting the cathedral's support columns. Instead he used his size. He slammed his fist into the ground, creating a shockwave that knocked the Black Templars off their feet. "Run!" Optimus commanded the mutants. "Go into the tunnels. Now!" The mutants scrambled, weeping and dragging their wounded, vanishing into the dark arteries of the underhive. But not all of them made it. Bolt shells, diamond-tipped, mass-reactive explosives, streaked through the gloom. The Black Templars recovered with transhuman speed. They did not aim for the giant robot. They aimed for the heretics fleeing him. Optimus watched in horror as the small mutant with the third eye, the one who had offered him the water, exploded in a spray of mist and bone. Time seemed to freeze for the Autobot leader. The small, broken body hit the mud. The water purifier clattered away useless. Something inside Optimus Prime shifted. It was not a gear nor a circuit. It was his spark. The sorrow he had felt since arriving in this nightmare dimension began to harden. It crystallized into a cold, fusion-hot fury. These were not soldiers fighting a war. They were butchers slaughtering the helpless. "They were harmless," Optimus whispered, his voice dropping to a subsonic growl that vibrated the stained glass windows above. He stood up to his full height. The fire on his armor died out, leaving him blackened, smoking, and terrifying. His blue optics narrowed until they were thin slits of piercing light. "You have lost your way," Prime roared. He activated his Energon axe. This time he did not hesitate. The Black Templars charged. They knew no fear. To them death was a duty. 3 initiates rushed him with chainswords revving, screaming litanies of hate. Optimus caught the first Marine in midair. He didn't crush him. He slammed him into the stone floor with enough force to shatter the power armor's ceramite plating, incapacitating the warrior instantly. The second Marine slashed at Prime's leg, the adamantium teeth of the chainsword grinding against Cybertronian alloy. Optimus pivoted, kicking the Templar across the cathedral into a stone sarcophagus. The Castellan stepped forward. He wielded a power sword that crackled with a disruptive energy field, a weapon capable of slicing through tank armor. "Your witch sorcery ends here, demon," the Castellan shouted. He was fast, faster than any human had a right to be. He dodged Prime's axe swing and thrust his sword into Prime's midsection, piercing the gap between his armor plates. Optimus gasped, a burst of static. The blade severed a primary hydraulic line. Blue energon sprayed out, mixing with the black sludge of the floor. Pain flooded his neural net. But Optimus Prime had fought Megatron for 4 million years. He had fought Unicron. He grabbed the blade of the power sword with his bare metal hand. The energy field burned his palm, melting his fingers, but he didn't let go. He wrenched the sword from the Castellan's grip and snapped the blade in half. The Castellan stared up, momentarily stunned. Optimus seized the Space Marine by the gorget of his armor, lifting him 7 feet into the air. The Castellan thrashed, punching Prime's faceplate, denting the metal, but Optimus held firm. "Look at me," Optimus demanded, bringing the struggling Marine close to his optics. "I possess a soul just as you do. Is this what your Emperor desires? The murder of the weak?" "The Emperor desires only the purity of mankind," the Castellan spat, detonating a crock grenade clamped to his belt. Boom. The explosion point blank against Prime's chest was devastating. It blew Optimus backward, shattering his chest windows and exposing the glowing, pulsing chamber of the matrix of leadership beneath. The Castellan was thrown free, his armor ruined, bleeding but alive thanks to his superhuman physiology. Optimus fell. The world spun. His energy reserves were at 4%. Critical failure. The remaining Black Templars regrouped, raising their bolters to finish the fallen Titan. But the cathedral groaned. The structural damage from the battle, the seismic charges, and the grenades had been too much. The ceiling, tons of ancient rock and Gothic masonry, began to give way. "Retreat," the Castellan ordered, coughing blood. The hive quakes. Optimus looked up. He saw a massive slab of ferrocrete plummeting directly toward the tunnel where the surviving mutants had fled. If he did nothing, he would survive. If he moved, he would be buried. "Freedom?" Optimus whispered. He forced his broken servos to scream one last time. He lunged, not at the Templars but at the tunnel entrance. He slammed his body against the crumbling archway, using his own chassis as a pillar to hold up the collapsing ceiling. The rocks fell. Tons of debris buried the cathedral. The Black Templars withdrew as the chamber was swallowed by dust and darkness. Silence returned to the Underhive. Under the mountain of rubble, in the crushing dark, a single blue light flickered weakly. Optimus Prime was pinned, crushed, and unable to move. But the tunnel behind him was intact. The mutants were safe. His systems began to shut down one by one to preserve the spark. Stasis lock, initiated, distress beacon, active, signal weak. He drifted into the void. But the signal did not go unheard. Deep in the warp-torn reality, far from the light of the Astronomicon, a new signature entered the system. A ship. Not Imperial. Not Chaos. It was green. And it was looking for a fight. The silence under the mountain of rubble did not last. It was broken not by rescue teams, but by the roar of crude combustion engines and the guttural barking of a language that sounded like rocks being ground together. The Orks had arrived. Specifically the Death Skulls, scavengers, looters, and thieves of the Green Tide. They had tracked the energy spike of the crashed star thing, and followed the scent of ozone and oil deep into the broken spine of the hive. "Zog me!" shouted Nob Grimjaw, his massive tusked face illuminated by a sputtering torch. He kicked a piece of Gothic masonry aside. "Look at the size of dat thing. That's a proper Gorkanaut, dat is." Buried in the dust, the motionless form of Optimus Prime gleamed faintly. His blue paint was chipped, his chest shattered, but the Death Skulls didn't see a corpse. They saw loot. "Get the chains?" Grimjaw bellowed, revving his buzzsaw. "We's draggin' dis shiny get back to de mech shop. De boss wants a new ride." Consciousness returned to Optimus Prime in waves of agonizing static. He was not dead. But he wished momentarily that he was. His sensors came online to a cacophony of noise. Hammering. Drilling. The smell of burning promethium and unwashed bodies. His optics flickered on, focusing through a haze of smoke. He was in a hangar. No, a slaughterhouse for machines. The walls were lined with the dismembered chassis of Lehman Russ tanks, Sentinel walkers, and even pieces of Tyrannid bioarmor, all bolted together in a nightmare of scrap code engineering. And they were touching him. Optimus tried to move, but heavy adamantium chains bound his wrists and ankles to a massive rig. Standing on his chest was a creature, a green skin with a mechanical eye and a pincer claw for a hand. Big Mech. The mech was welding a jagged plate of rusted iron directly onto Prime's exposed abdominal hydraulics. "Stop!" Optimus rasped. His vocal processor was damaged, modulating his voice into a deep, vibrating growl. The big mech jumped, then grinned, revealing a maw of yellow fangs. "It's awake." The mech hit Prime's chest with a wrench. "Hold still, you git. I'm fixin' ya up." You was bleedin' that glowy juice everywhere. Optimus looked down. The repair was barbaric. They had hammered crude bolts into his living metal. They had patched his sophisticated Cybertronian alloys with scrap from a garbage dump. It was agony. It was violation. "Release me," Optimus commanded, straining against the chains. The metal groaned. "Nah," the mech laughed. "You belong to WAC. Grimjaw now. You gonna be the biggest, stompiest truck in the sector." Optimus scanned the room. Hundreds of orcs. They were brawling, eating, and firing weapons into the air. They were monsters, pure and simple. But unlike the Imperium, there was no pretense of religion or order. This was pure, unadulterated chaos. Self-repair systems, critical. External energy source detected. Optimus paused. He felt power. It wasn't energon. It was something raw and psychic. The orcs believed he was a mighty machine. They believed he would work. And in this galaxy, the collective psychic belief of the greenskins bent reality itself. Their crude repairs were actually functioning because they thought they should. It was a perversion of science, but it was fuel. "I am not a truck," Optimus said. His optics shifted from a dim flicker to a blinding, combat-ready azure. He engaged his transformation cogs. The big mech's eyes went wide. "What?" Optimus didn't transform fully. He shifted his geometry just enough to create slack in the chains. Then he pulled. Snap. The adamantium links shattered. The big mech was thrown across the hangar, crashing into a pile of explosive squigs. Optimus tore his arms free, ripping the rig from the ceiling. He sat up, towering over the terrified and excited orcs. He looked like a Frankenstein monster of his former self, half noble Autobot, half scrap heap gladiator. "Wag!" The roar went up instantly. The orcs didn't flee. They grabbed their choppa and shoot us. They wanted a fight. "I have no time for this," Optimus muttered. He stood up, shaking off the loose scrap. A rocket flew past his head. A hail of bullets pinged off his new, ugly iron plating. Optimus scanned the exit. A massive blast door painted with a red sun. He engaged his T-cog. For the first time on this world, the transformation was painful. The crude orc repairs ground against his gears. But he forced the change. Optimus folded down, wheels locking into place, cab forming around the engine block. He became the truck. But he was different now. The orcs had welded spikes to his grill. His exhaust pipes belched thick, black smoke. He looked like a vehicle born of the apocalypse. "It's a truck." The orcs screamed in delight. "Get to bikes. Let's race." Optimus slammed the accelerator. He crushed a dozen orcs under his massive tires as he drifted around the hangar and smashed through the blast doors. He burst out into the ash wastes of Farasex. The landscape was a gray desert of toxic dust. Optimus hit the road, a broken highway of ancient Ferrocrete, and pushed his engine to the red line. "Freedom," he projected, "is the right of all sentient beings. But you..." He checked his rearview mirrors. "You are testing my patience." Behind him, a dust cloud rose. A swarm of orc war buggies and death copters was pursuing him. They were whooping and firing guns into the air. They weren't angry. They were having the best day of their lives. Optimus realized the horrific truth. He couldn't reason with them. He couldn't scare them. They loved war. They loved him because he was a machine of war. "I cannot fight the entire planet," Prime calculated. "I need to leave this system." But his sensors picked up a new signal. Directly ahead, across the ash wastes, lay the primary hive city Tenebros. And radiating from it was a beacon. A specific frequency. Signal match, 98%. Origin, Cybertronian. Optimus felt a spark of hope. Was it the Ark? A distress beacon from a surviving Autobot? No. The frequency was wrong. It was cold. Calculated. Decepticon. Shockwave. It had to be Shockwave. If the Decepticons were here manipulating this war. Optimus swerved, drifting his massive chassis through the dust, aiming straight for the hive city. Behind him, the orc whack grew larger. Ahead of him, the Imperial artillery began to fire. And somewhere in the city, an old enemy was waiting. "Roll out," Optimus commanded himself. As he drove into the Valley of Death, the orcs cheering behind him and the sky burning ahead, Optimus Prime became something this galaxy understood. He ceased to be a diplomat. He became an avatar of war. The assault on Hive City Tenebros was not a battle. It was a collision of eras. On one side stood the ancient, rusted defenses of the Imperium, walls of ferrocrete 10 meters thick, manned by thousands of lobotomized gun servitors and terrified conscripts. On the other was a tidal wave of green anarchy, the Ork whack, screaming, burning, and laughing as they slammed into the kill zones. And at the tip of the spear was Optimus Prime. He was a juggernaut of scrap iron and fury. The Ork modifications to his chassis, spiked rams, reinforced plating, and overcharged engines, roared with a machine spirit that defied physics. He didn't dodge the incoming artillery, he crushed it. Optimus smashed through the primary gate of St. Drusus, his momentum carrying him through the adamantium doors with the force of a meteor. He didn't stop to fight the infantry. He drifted his massive bulk through the burning courtyard, crushing a Lehman Russ tank beneath his tires, and transformed mid-air as he launched himself onto the maglev elevator tracks leading to the spires. Shockwave! Optimus shouted, his voice echoing up the infinite shaft of the hive. He began the climb. Not flying but climbing. His hands, now tipped with crude iron claws welded by the Orks, dug into the metal ribs of the city. He ascended past the hab blocks where billions lived in squalor, past the manufactorums choking on smog, rising toward the only clean thing on this planet, the domain of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the spire of logic. Here the air was filtered, smelling of incense and sterilized ozone. The noise of the war below was just a dull vibration in the floor plates. Optimus pulled himself over the final ledge, crashing onto the polished marble floor of the Omnisia's temple. He stood up, shaking the dust of the underhive from his armor. He was a ruin, leaking oil, covered in Ork graffiti and Imperial blood, standing in a cathedral of pristine, cold machinery. "I know you are here," Optimus growled. His battle mask retracted, revealing a face etched with exhaustion. "Show yourself." The shadows at the far end of the nave did not move, but the darkness seemed to organize itself. Rows of tech priests, their red robes motionless, stood like statues. They were not attacking. They were observing. A single monotone voice filled the chamber. It did not come from a voxcaster. It came from everywhere. The probability of your survival was 0.04%. Your arrival necessitates a recalibration of my paradigms. From the center of the altar, a figure emerged. It was familiar, yet horrifyingly different. It was purple, massive, and singular in its focus. But Shockwave had adapted to the 41st millennium. His hexagonal chest window was now adorned with imperial purity seals and scrolls of binary scripture. His singular yellow eye was surrounded by optical augmetics resembling the cog symbol of the Mechanicus. Cables, mechadendrites, snaked from his back, plugging him directly into the hive's central cogitator. He was not just a Decepticon. He was the Archmagos. "Shockwave," Optimus aimed his ion blaster. "What have you done?" Shockwave walked forward, the sound of his footsteps heavy and precise. He did not raise his weapon. He held a data slate in his hand, like a priest holding a Bible. "I have found efficiency prime," Shockwave stated coldly. "On Cybertron, our war exhausted our resources. We fought for ideology. It was illogical." He gestured to the tech priests surrounding him. They bowed in unison. "Here," Shockwave continued, "war is not a drain on resources. War is the resource. The humans breed to die. Their faith fuels their industry. Their hatred fuels their survival. It is a perfect, closed loop of violence. I simply optimized it." Optimus looked at the cables running from Shockwave into the floor. He realized with sickening clarity what was happening. Shockwave wasn't conquering this world. He was running it. He was the machine god these people prayed to. "You are feeding on their suffering," Optimus said, his voice trembling with rage. "You are prolonging a stalemate to harvest energy." "I am bringing order to chaos," Shockwave corrected. "The Imperium is a chaotic variable. The Orks are a chaotic variable. By manipulating both sides, feeding tactical data to the Kriegers, giving scrap code to the Orks, I ensure the conflict never ends. The energy output of this forge world has increased by 400% since my integration. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings." Optimus roared, leveling his weapon. "Not to be cattle in your experiment." "Freedom is an emotional construct," Shockwave replied, his single eye pulsing. "It is inefficient." Shockwave raised his left hand, his cannon arm. But it was no longer just a laser. It had been modified with Necron Gauss technology and Tau railgun accelerants. I anticipated your moral objection, Prime. That is why I prepared a counter-argument. Shockwave snapped his fingers, a metallic click. The floor behind Shockwave opened. Rising from the pit was not a Decepticon, nor an Imperial Titan. It was a monstrosity. It was the corpse of an Imperial Knight, a towering walker of war, but it had been hollowed out. Its cockpit was empty. Instead, its limbs were reinforced with Cybertronian hydraulics. Its head had been replaced with the severed, reanimated head of a Tyranid hive tyrant, wired with control nodes. It was a hybrid of the galaxy's worst horrors, piloted by a Decepticon combat algorithm. Project Abomination. Online. The beast roared, a sound of organic rage amplified by speakers. Deconstruct him, Shockwave ordered, turning his back to return to his calculations. Optimus Prime stood alone. He was low on energy, damaged and outgunned. Below him the Orks were dying. Above him the cold void of space. And in front of him, a monster that defied the laws of nature and machine. Optimus activated his Energon axe. The blade sputtered, weak and flickering. One shall stand, Optimus whispered, tightening his grip. One shall fall. He didn't wait for the beast to charge. He ran forward. The abomination struck with the force of a tectonic plate. Its claw, a hybrid of Imperial adamantium and Tyranid chitin, slammed into Optimus Prime, lifting the Autobot leader off his feet and hurling him across the sanctum. Prime crashed into a bank of cogitators, glass and bone circuits shattering in a shower of sparks. Armor integrity, critical. Hydraulic failure in Sector 7. Optimus struggled to rise. The monster roared, a wet, gurgling sound that merged the scream of a biological apex predator with the revving of a Knight's reactor. It charged again. Analysis, Shockwave's voice droned from the altar, devoid of concern. The Autobot possesses superior tactical combat subroutines. However, the biological component of Project Abomination possesses zero self-preservation instincts. Advantage, Abomination. Optimus rolled aside as the beast's pincer crushed the floor where his head had been. He didn't try to overpower it. He couldn't. He was old, tired, and running on fumes. He grabbed a torn conduit cable from the floor, thick as a tree trunk humming with the city's power, and lashed out. It wasn't a sword, it was a whip of high-voltage electricity. The cable wrapped around the abomination's neck. Optimus pulled. The beast shrieked as millions of volts fried its organic nervous system, cooking the Tyranid flesh inside the metal shell. But the machine half kept moving. Its thermal cannon powered up, glowing a hellish red right in Prime's face. One shall stand, Optimus grunted, tightening his grip. Boom. The cannon fired. Ideally, it would have vaporized Prime's head. But at the last second, a rusted metal plate on Prime's shoulder, welded there by the Ork Big Mech, took the hit. The Ork physics held. The plate didn't melt, it just got hot. Optimus seized the moment. He drove his crude iron claw directly into the abomination's cockpit. There was no pilot to kill, only a pulsating mass of purple brain matter and wires. Optimus crushed it. The abomination shuddered, spasmed, and collapsed, dead weight crashing to the marble floor. Optimus stood over the corpse, smoke rising from his chassis. He turned his gaze to Shockwave. Your experiment has failed. Shockwave did not step back. His single yellow eye narrowed. Incorrect, the Decepticon replied. You have merely introduced a new variable. Violence is data. I have collected enough. Shockwave raised his hand. The spire shook. The mechadendrites disconnected from his back. The Imperium approaches, Shockwave stated. An exterminatus fleet has entered orbit. They detect the Tyranid biosignature of my creation. They will burn this world to ash to contain it. My work here is concluded. Yours is futile. No. Optimus lunged forward, aiming his ion blaster. Shockwave activated a personal teleporter. The air around him warped, purple lightning crackling. You fight for a corpse of a galaxy, Prime. Logic dictates that you should let it rot. With a distortion of light, Shockwave vanished. Optimus was alone in the silent temple. He rushed to the balcony. Far above, through the atmospheric smog, he saw them. The ships of the Imperial Navy. Gothic cathedrals in the void. They were positioning themselves. Lance batteries were charging. They were going to kill everyone, The Kriegers. The mutants in the sump. The Orks. The innocents. Not today, Optimus whispered. He turned back to the central console Shockwave had used. It was connected to the planetary grid, the shields, the manufactorums, the void shields. The void shields were down. Shockwave had lowered them to allow his escape. Optimus hacked into the interface. It was archaic, brutal code fighting him every step of the way. Access denied. Machine spirit angry. Listen to me. Optimus shouted, placing his hands directly onto the rune-encrusted console. He didn't hack it, he spoke to it. He used the matrix of leadership to project a pulse of pure, benevolent energy into the tortured machine spirit of the city. I'm not your master. I am your ally. Protect them. The console stopped flashing red. It glowed blue. High above the city, the void shields flickered. The massive energy domes, usually requiring the sacrifice of psycheers to activate, roared to life. They formed an impenetrable umbrella over Hive Tenebros. Seconds later, the sky caught fire. The Imperial fleet opened fire. Cyclonic torpedoes and lance beams rained down, possessing enough firepower to crack the crust of the planet. But they hit the shields. The sky turned into a blinding sheet of white fire. The noise was deafening, a constant roar of apocalypse. Inside the shield, the city shook, but it stood. Optimus Prime stood on the balcony watching the firestorm. He was holding the sky up with his will. The energy drain was immense. The console sparked, exploding in his face, but he didn't let go. He channeled his own spark energy into the grid to keep the shields holding. Energy reserves, 0%. Life support, offline. Spark integrity, failing. Freedom? He whispered, his vision fading to gray. Is the right? He fell. 3 days later. The bombardment had ceased. The Imperial fleet, satisfied that nothing could survive such a barrage, or perhaps called away to another war zone, had moved on. The surface of Ferrisex was glass. But the Hive City stood. The shields had held just long enough. In the ruins of the upper spire, a squad of surviving tech priests picked through the debris. They were looking for their god, their data. They found a crater in the Omnisia's temple. In the center lay a mountain of metal. Red and blue, scorched black. Is it dead? A junior adept chirped in binary. Muggos Kepri approached the chassis. She reached out with a mechadendrite to scan the core. There was no power. The reactor was cold. The matrix was dark. It gave everything, Kepri whispered, a rare pang of organic emotion hitting her. To save the biology. Illogical. Beautiful. Process it for scrap? The adept asked. Kepri looked at the silent faceplate of the Titan. She remembered how it had moved. How it had spoken. No, she ordered. Seal this chamber. Mark it as forbidden. This is a reliquary. She turned to leave but paused. Deep within the metal giant, buried under layers of armor and spent circuitry, her sensors picked up a faint, rhythmic pulse. It wasn't an engine. It wasn't a reactor. Thump, thump, was a spark. Faint as a candle in a hurricane but burning. Optimus Prime did not die. He waited. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But deep in the ruins of a forgotten world there is now also